Welcome everyone. This video is going to start our unit where we investigate human well-being. This video is just a quick introduction to help us figure out, well, what are we trying to investigate? We'll look at some examples that are going to help us hopefully focus our attention on this idea of well-being that we're trying to analyze. Then we'll make a distinction between two kinds of value that's going to be really important for understanding the philosophical question about well-being and then trying to assess the philosophical theories that we have. Now, we can start out just by asking the question, why are you going to college? Now, for some of you, maybe you're just going with the flow, but maybe some of you were a bit more reflective and you were motivated to go to college because you think it's going to help you achieve some of your goals. And you might think that attending college is going to help you maybe gain knowledge, develop new skills, meet new people, understand diverse perspectives about the world, maybe even grow as a person, eventually get a degree, get a job, develop a career, and thereby make more money and hopefully thereby live a more stable life. But these are some of the things that you hope that going to college will help you achieve, and you're motivated to get these things that you think college might help you achieve. But why do you want some or all of those things? Some of your motivations might be altruistic, where you're thinking about others. You think, hey, I want to help others, and I think getting this degree will help me get a job in social work, which will thereby help me help others, and I care about others. But probably at least part of your motivations are self-interested. You're thinking about the ways in which these things that college helps you get will make your life better, or how some or all of those things will be good for your own well-being. The idea is having financial stability in your life will make your life better. And so you might be trying to go to college in order to achieve that financial stability that makes your own life better. That's good for your own well-being. So that there is already helping us focus our attention on this value that we sometimes talk about of well-being. It's this self-interested value. It's this value we're focusing on when we're thinking about how things make things better for us, as opposed to maybe thinking about how we can do our duty or help others, for instance. We can focus our attention by also comparing some lives. Consider this first life. A person's born into poverty. They receive enough food and drink to survive in their childhood, but they also often suffer the pain of hunger and malnutrition. They get an education, but the schools they attend are underfunded and they're not able to get very much attention and are never able to really develop their full intellectual potential. When they get to their teenage years, they get a physically demanding factory job and then end up skipping school to take odd jobs during the day as well, so they can help their family pay the bills and put food on the table. This causes them ultimately to drop out of high school and work full-time at the factory. They don't really like the job. They find the job to be mind-numbing and monotonous, but they just need the money. Eventually in their life, they get married and have children who they love. They love their family. But unfortunately, they have to often miss out on many of the joys that go with having those relationships, since they need to work all the time just to make ends meet. Then unfortunately in their 40s, they're diagnosed with cancer, maybe from chemicals they encounter in their job. The bills eventually stack up, they become too much, and they decide to stop treatment, and they die of cancer at 45. Now, when you think about this kind of life, it looks like overall, it didn't go particularly well for the person that was living it. But now compare this life to a second one where a person is born into a middle-class family. Their family provides them with love, time, and more than enough to survive. They're given the means to fully develop their mind and body to its full potential. They get a part-time job at a retail store while in high school, but not because they have to, but they get to spend time with their friends, and they only work enough so they can have some money to spend on entertainment for themselves. After high school, they go to college, and they begin to recognize their privilege that they've enjoyed throughout their life. They realize that they've been dealt a pretty good hand of cards compared to someone like the life in Life 1. And because of that, they think about the ways in which they could give back, and so they start working towards a career where they can help others. And after college, they get a job, they start advancing their career, but their job gives them enough flexibility that they have enough time to develop meaningful relationships with friends and a spouse and family. Their income's relatively modest, but they have enough to pay for a nice home, food, entertainment, maybe a vacation or two here and there, nothing extravagant. And they never have to worry about money too much. Moreover, they don't find their job boring and monotonous. They feel a lot of passion about it. It's stressful at times, but it provides them with a sense of meaning and fulfillment nonetheless. Now, it looks like Life 2 is going much better for the person that's living it. It's a good life for that person. Now, I'm not saying that that person is a better person morally than the person in Life 1. I'm just saying that their life is going better for them. All right? I'm saying that they are living at a higher level of well-being, and the person in Life 1 is living at a lower level of well-being. And so that suggests that this value, there's more of it in life 1 and there's less of it in life 2. Yet, morally speaking, those lives are just as important. But in terms of the value of well-being, of what's good for the person, looks like there's less of that value in life 1 and more of that value in life 2. That's the kind of value we're talking about when we investigate well-being. Or alternatively, consider this description of someone's progression of their life. Imagine they're diagnosed with cancer, they begin chemotherapy for several months, but this causes them a lot of pain and suffering. And while their health insurance covers some of the bills, they're still going into a lot of debt paying for it. All of this causes them to experience a debilitating depression that makes it difficult for them to even just get out of bed. Things that used to give them joy, like their family get-togethers, hanging out with friends, and their hobbies, now feel like a burden. They just can't get the same joy out of them. But eventually, the chemotherapy starts to work, and their physical health and strength starts to return. Their friends, it turns out, started a GoFundMe that went viral, and they've raised enough money to pay off at least the majority of the bills for the cancer treatment. Despite all this, they're still having some difficulties with depression, but they start seeing a therapist, and slowly their mental health begins to improve as well. When you consider this period of someone's life, it starts out going pretty poorly for them, and it slowly improves. So this value that we refer to as well-being, the amount of value is low beginning, and then we start to get more and more of this value to enter into this person's life. Whatever that value is, that's the value we mean by well-being. Now, the philosophical question that comes up here is, what is well-being? All right? What is this value? What is the nature of the good life for a human being? When we say that one life went really well for that person, it was a good life. We say another person lived a really horrible, terrible life. Well, what is that goodness or badness? Putting this in terms of value, what is it that has value for an individual's own life? So not what is morally valuable, but what is valuable for that person. Now, when we put it that way in terms of value, though, we need to distinguish two kinds of value. Firstly, there's instrumental value, which is the value something has insofar as it leads to other things of value. A prime example of this is that money seems to have instrumental value. Money is good because it helps us get other things that we think are good for us. It helps us pay for our health insurance, pay for our food, pay for our travel, and we think those things are good. But the other kind of value that we can talk about is intrinsic value. This is the value that something would have for its own sake, independently of the things that it may or may not lead to. Imagine that you have a big stack of money, but you can't do anything with it. You can't buy health insurance, you can't buy food, you can't pay for travel. It just sits there collecting more and more money, but you can never spend it. At that point, it doesn't look like the money has any value. And so when we consider the money for its own sake, there is no value. There's no intrinsic value. The only value money has is instrumental. Value, of course, can be positive. That's when we call things good. And it can be negative. That's when we call things bad. And so this instrumental and intrinsic distinction can be made for both the good and the bad case, and we can combine them in a couple different ways. So here's some examples. Something could be intrinsically and instrumentally good, because it might be good even when we think about it all by itself, but it might also lead to other good things. But something could be good all by itself when we ignore what it leads to, but still lead to bad things. So we might still avoid that good thing in order to avoid the bad things that it leads to. Something could be intrinsically bad, but instrumentally good. Or something could be both intrinsically and instrumentally bad. It might be bad when you consider it by itself, and it might just lead to more bad things as well. So with that distinction in mind, revisiting this question of what's the good life for a human being? This is a question about what is intrinsically valuable. We're asking what intrinsically contributes to a person's own well-being. What intrinsically makes a life good for the person living it. On the other side, what intrinsically detracts from a person's own well-being? What would intrinsically be bad for a person living that life? Now, once we figure out what these intrinsic ingredients of well-being are, we could then start to ask questions about instrumental value, about what instruments or tools would be helpful for getting those ingredients. For instance, will college truly help you live a better life? In order to answer that, we first have to figure out what the ingredients of a good life are. And once we've figured that out, then we can start trying to figure out if college helps you get that or not. So that's all for this time. Bye-bye.